Hey guys, welcome to Code Decode. In this video, we are going to cover a very important interview question, that is, how do you write your null checks in your Java code? This is the most effective way of checking whether your coding style is an amateur coding style or it is a professional coding ways. So let's see how to answer this question in an interview and also to use this in your real life to prevent amateur way of coding. So let's get started. So yes, there is a very basic way of checking whether your inputs are null or not. For example, you have name, emails and user, that is a custom object coming in as an input. So you have a simple string, you have list of strings and you have a custom object. How do you check nulls? What we usually used to do in very early time was, we directly check the string as it is not null and it is not empty, because a single double this is also an empty string, which will not help us in any ways. So this is the two ways how we check the string's emptiness. For list, how do we check it? We check whether the list is not null, the list is not empty, and for each element in the list, which is a string, again we duplicate this condition. That is, email should not be null and should not be empty. And for the custom object, we just check whether the user object is not null, the user.getAddress not null, the user.getAddress.ct is not null. Basically, there must be a user pojo, which will contain a class of type address. Address would have city, pin code, state and all those things. So from that we check the city. So after 3 layers of null check, equals to not null, not equals to null, not equals to null, then you will be able to print the city for that user. So this is a very bad way of coding. Though many of us might still be using it, it is not a wrong way or it will not give you the wrong results, but this is not a professional way of writing the null, handling the nulls. If you can see, there's lot of not equal to null, not equal to null, not equal to null. Here it's the abundance of not equals to null. So this is not something which is good. Now we have 5 professional ways of handling it. What are these 5 professional ways? I'll take you first to summary. The 5 ways that we are going to cover here is the utility classes like collection utils, object utils, string utils. The optional, the defensive programming, which is nowadays in very much trend. The null object pattern. Yes, this is a very important design pattern. You would say there is enough of design patterns, Yashi. Why again null pointer object patterns? Because this is important and this is useful when you have a lot of null checks in your code. Though this seems to be too much of boilerplate code, but trust me, it is also in trend right now. Then the 5th one is annotation and static analysis. We have a complete video on this, but I'll cover this in quick overview here. Hey guys, recently we have launched a course covering an end-to-end full-stack application using Angular as front-end and microservices and Spring Boot as the back-end. Also, we have used Cloud to deploy this application, and we have used CI/CD, that is Jenkins and Argo CD, for continuous integration and continuous deployment. The technologies that we have used is REST-RESTful web services, Spring Boot and microservices for back-end, Angular for front-end. GitHub we have used for version control system. Also, to make the code unit testable, we have used JUnits. We have used Sonar for code quality checks. Also, for containerization, we have used Docker and Kubernetes. And to deploy this whole application, we have used AWS and multiple services from AWS. Also, we have used SQL as well as NoSQL, that is MongoDB and SQL. On AWS, since for the SQL we have RDS, we have used those services, and Jenkins and Argo CD for CI/CD pipeline. Also, this is an architecture of the application that we have created where the front end is Angular and the back end is microservices. We have used ALB load balancers, Ingress for routing and load balancing. And we have used SQL and MongoDB for SQL and NoSQL DB management with Eureka server and all those microservices counterparts. Now, this is the CI/CD pipeline. This is the CI/CD flowchart for the application that we have created on local. So this is something, a flow when you create an application in local, push it to GitHub, create a Jenkins pipeline and do the CI/CD using Jenkins and Argo CD. And at the end, deploy the whole code at AWS EKS. Complete description of this course is covered in a very separate video. The link for that video is also given in the description bar below. And also the link to purchase that course from Udemy is also in the description bar below. So please go and check the description for all these links. So let's get started with the utility classes. Now the 3 utility classes for string, the collection and a custom object is string utils, collection utils and object utils. So for string, we use string utils.empty. For collections like list, we could use collectionutils.isEmpty for list. Why not object utils? Because object utils do not work seamlessly with the list where there is null object still present. It will not tell you it is empty or not. So why object utils have been used? For object utils is a utility class that simplifies the common object related operations to avoid the null pointer exceptions and simplifies the null checks. And this is provided by two packages, that is Apache Common Slang and Spring Framework. So for the Spring only, when you use object utils.isEmpty, it checks for null, it checks for empty strings, it checks for empty array and empty collection map. But if you try to use it for list, then what will happen? It will consider the null elements as not empty list. So suppose if you have list of 3 elements and all the 3 are null, it will not say that this particular list is empty. It will say it has 3 elements. So object utils do not work seamlessly fine with null elements. Then what you have to do is you have to stream on that list and check whether objects is null or not. So object utils.isEmpty handles the beautiful cases of null objects. It returns yes, it is empty. Empty strings is also written as empty. Empty collections are written as true, empty, and array and maps also written as true. Now, when not to use object utils with primitives, it is of no use to use object utils because it works only on custom or the predefined objects, not on primitives. The second is a string utility that is also provided by Apache Common Slang and Spring Framework. Now, if you want to check whether string is empty, it not just checks for null, but also for length equals to 0. For example, if it is null, string util will tell you it is empty. If it is just a double quote starting and ending, nothing in between, then also it says it's empty. But with anything in between, it says, yes, you have something, it is not empty, false. So these are the 2 common ways. The third one was collection utils. When you have the list, because object utils were not working seamlessly fine with list, what you could have done is, you could have also used collection utils.isEmpty. And with each email, you can internally check, since the type of that list is string, you can internally check string utils.isEmpty. So for strings, specifically strings, you can use string utils, and for any other object like list or arrays, maps, you can use object utils. Now a very quick question that might arise in your head is that, can I use object utils also for string utils? Because string is a string is a predefined class and its object will be a custom object or predefined object. So yes, string is an object. It's a predefined class. So saying object utils can replace the string utils is not true. It's not right, because it's as good as saying a toolbox can replace the screwdriver just because screwdriver is present in a toolbox. Similarly, the object utils is a generic terms while the screwdriver is something for very specific task. So that's why string utility was created for some specific task. For example, I'll give you one example where object util will not be able to do all the operations that a string utility can do. For example, if there is a 4 spaces in between of double quotes, then the only method you have for the checking of empty is empty. And it will say, no, it is not empty because there are 4 spaces. There is no trimming of this. But when you go with the string utils and check if it is blank, it will say, yes, it is blank. It is of no use to you. It is empty. So that's why I say that object utils is a very generic term, and you may not always do all the kinds of operations that you can do with the string utilities on string. So if you're working with string, try to go with string utils. If you're working with custom objects, maps, everything, try to go with object utils. List and all the kinds of collections, then go for collection utils also. So this is a very basic way to prevent the null pointer exception and prevent the null checks of name not equals to null and name not equals to empty. So this checks not only it is null, also it checks whether it is not empty. So just one single method will cover the 2 if conditions of you like this. Similarly, with these 3 ways of handling nulls and empty that can be done with this string utils and collection utils combination. And with all these 1, 2, 3 kind of null checks, such a bad way of programming, it can be done with object utils.isEmpty, and for each, just print it up. So that's the beauty of how you can use it with map and custom objects. The second way to do it is a modern functional approach. Now, as soon as function comes into your mind, what comes? Lambdas, optionals, streams. Yes. So this is a beautiful way of handling nulls by using optional. So what you do here is, when you try to find a user from a database, So when you try to find a user, you fetch the user, but you wrap it in optional.null label and makes the return type of this method as optional of user. So now it is very much safe that when you try to find user, and if the user is present, then you can print the name. Otherwise, if it is not present, then nothing will happen. So this user.getName is null pointer safe because this user is a optional. And this if present will only work if user is really present, and hence user.anything trying to fetch out of null becomes null pointer exception, which will be prevented because of this optional. The second way is to provide defaults. Like I don't want to just return you nothing. It will basically do nothing. So what rather we can do is we can set a default. And how to set a default? So on this user that is optional, you can map it to get username or else anonymous. So this will not throw you a null pointer exception when it is null. Rather, optional.map will return you an empty optional which will cater to this particular condition and will return you anonymous. So your username becomes anonymous if this user 123L is not found in the database. The third is a very beautiful way of chaining it up. So you can use optional and filter. If the age is greater than 18, then get the email address. And if it is present, then send a email notification. So this is how you can safely chain over the optional one. And also if another case, if empty, you can throw an exception or you can give a empty response. So this is a beautiful way of using optional here. There is another problem with nulls, that is a pyramid of doom. This is a very common interview question, and they would ask you if you want to find the city of the user, where you have a user as a custom object, in that you have a custom object as address, into that you have a string called a city. And if that is not null, please print it up. So if you write this pyramid of doom, then your interview is doomed. Because this is if, if, inside if, inside if, inside if. So there's 3 if loops. Or else you could even have done if not null and end. Not get rid of this not null and end this. So even if it is one single if, there is a 3 not null conditions written like this. So this is a very bad way. It's an old programming way, and this is called as a pyramid of doom. Then what is a cleaner way? This can be easily converted into an optional, with an optional into something which is much cleaner, safer and functional way of programming. So what you do is, you first of all, as soon as you get the user, you create an optional.offNull label. And now it is safe for chaining. Like I have shown you here, it is safe for chaining now. So now you can chain it up and map it to get address. Then you will have an address object. Then you can map it to city. So all your users are now specifically mapped to city. So suppose you have user 1 Delhi, user 2 Pune. Then the last of this map will be Delhi, Pune. Or else unknown. Now I'll tell you step by step what this beautiful compact code will do. So the first thing, optional.offNull label will take a user and it can be null. If it is null, it will see it is null. So optional.offNull label will return you optional.empty, and hence all the both map will be truncated. It will not be called, and it will return the unknown, because this is called when your stream contains optional.empty. So if this whole stream contains optional.empty, then or else condition will work. Be it in any case. If this returns optional.empty, this will work. If this returns optional.empty, it will work. If this returns optional.empty, then also this will catch it and will return you a default one, that is unknown. But if the user is not null, then you proceed to next step and you map that user to its address. So now your user object is gone. Now you cannot fetch anything from your user object because your stream is now only consisting of address for user 1, user 2, user 3. Now in the third one, when you are trying to map it up, you return the optional.empty if the address is null. So this map, when it is working on optional, will not return you null as the address. Rather, it will wrap it up into an optional with optional.empty. So now, when you have optional.empty, it skips the next map or any other by default the chaining or the links and directly jump to this default as unknown. Because as I told you, in any of these steps, if optional.empty is returned at any step, every other step is now skipped. And the only step that will work is to return an unknown, which is a default name for the city name for the user. So now when your address also returns you null, then it returns unknown because everything is skipped and optional.empty is returned and cached by this particular method. This optional.map accepts a function of any type. For example, address is not null. It is a type of address as a custom object address. Then it will proceed to the next step. But if it is not, then function, though even the function returns null, the result automatically becomes optional.empty. So if address is null, though your get address, the return type is a custom object who's actually a null, null, proper null, but since it is working on optional in the chain, it will be wrapped into as optional.empty. Same goes with the city also. The return type of the city is string. So if it is empty, this will return you null. The string's value will be null. But since you are working on the optional, this will return you optional.empty and will return an unknown city. Or else, if it is a proper Delhi or Mumbai, then it will return you the optional of Mumbai or Delhi and proceeds to the final step. So this or else null will return unknown only if any of the previous step returns optional.empty. But it will return a proper city if everybody is fine, nobody is null, everything is working fine, then it will return you proper Delhi or Mumbai as a city. So when to use this optional? When the return type of method might return null or nothing. There is a complex chain of with nested objects like we have it here, user, address, city, and so on. And you want to make the null checks rather than using not null, not null, not null like this. Then this is the way to write the code in a very professional way with not even a single not null. But still this code screams that I will make sure that you will not get a null pointer exception. And also you will get a default value as unknown if the city is not available or the user is not available or the address of that user is not available. So a beautiful way of screaming up that there is no null pointer exception possible in these 4 lines of code that you have written. Now I'll tell you the third beautiful way, and this is a very trendy way nowadays because, for example, if you have a banking application and here if by any case your user is null and you return an unknown user, but after that your logic is that if the user is something which is not null or no exceptions is coming, go ahead, access the balance, access the statement or even withdraw the amount. So even if that legitimate user is not null or it's a default user, I don't want any of the subsequent action to happen. So the best way to prevent the null is to throw an exception then and there. Not the null pointer exception but. So what happens is initially when the user was null, you throw a null pointer exception on user.getAddress or user.getBankingDetails. The null pointer exception is very unknown to the client and it will say what null pointer exception. I don't know. You are the Java developer. You might know what is null pointer exception. The user might not know it. So what is the best way to handle and also make it fail at the same time? So this is a fail fast way of handling the null pointer exceptions. So what you do is detect the problem as early as possible and prevent any invalid data to enter your system. So this prevents the null pointer exception as an exception, but still will throw some exception, which will prevent any further logic or any further advancement in the system or the application. So what you do is you fail fast. You get a user. During the checks, you check whether object requires not null. That means whatever object you are passing to this particular method should be not null. And if it is null by any case, please give a meaningful message because I'm going to throw an exception. And your exception message will be something that you write here. So now if the client says an empty user, then user will get that the user cannot be null. Or for example, you are passing a proper user, but you forgot to type your name in the form. Then in there, your user will fail saying, I cannot register you or I cannot let you handle your banking details because you have sent the user.getName as null. Rather than null pointer exception, you will get a proper error message that username cannot be null. So this is a beautiful way of having the fail fast exceptions, but not the null pointer exception. So now you safely work with user because you know that these two things are not empty. So this program stops immediately if user is null or user.getName is null. And instead of throwing the null pointer exception later somewhere deep in the program, it fails early with a clear proper message that your user is null or your username that you entered in your form is empty or null. So what is the benefit of this fail fast application? Fail fast exception is that you don't get null pointer exception, but you get a proper exception message, but you get an exception. So here you detect the problem as soon as the problem arises. That's what null pointer also do. As soon as you try to do user.null, you send an exception. But also you are making sure that even though you are not getting null pointer exception because you are just printing the user, here itself you are failing this application. The null pointer might not have reached here because user is not null. But what if I say user is null here itself? Then if you would not have used this particular line, this line would have failed. So going deep inside some method, your user.getName might have failed. But to prevent that subsequent null pointer exception inside the code, you are preventing that null pointer exception at this first line itself saying your user cannot be null. So you detect the problem early. You are not even doing user.name. You are just checking whether object requires not null with user. Because in the code, I might explore any of the property of user. So you detect the problem early, right as soon as you receive it. So your clear message says user is null instead of null pointer exception. The code tells developer what inputs are required and prevent the corrupted or invalid data following deeper into the system or into this application logic. So this is the defensive programming or the fail fast programming, that as soon as you get something null, you send an exception, not the null pointer one, rather than waiting for any of the attributes of that null to be fetched like this inside the very deep code logic. Now there's a fourth method also. Now you would say after this method explanation that this fourth is a boilerplate code. I do not want to do it. So it's completely your choice. It's just a design pattern. And nowadays this is being used to prevent the messy null checks or the logics or the optionals or these kinds of things. This is just a way to do polymorphism and to prevent the messy null checks. It is a proper design pattern, and I'll tell you why this is so much in use nowadays. Let's get to the code first and then we will think about why was it used. First thing, when you don't have any null object available, you would directly go to the database, find the user by user ID. If it is not null, it's a happy case. You get the user, you get the username, and you send the notification, welcome, code decode. But if the user is null, this will give you null pointer exception. And if by any case it is asynchronous, even the notification will be sent as welcome space nothing. If the user is null, you have to do two things. Prevent any such kind of get operation to return you null or empty, and to prevent the notifications. So what you can do is, these two operations can be catered into a subclass of user. So I'll tell you what is this null object pattern. This pattern says there is a user class which has name, email, is active, and a method called as send notification who gives an email notification with the proper message to that particular email ID of that user with the hi dash name. Now I'll create another object. Remember, this is a proper class named as null user. It has a static final instance which will give you a new object of this. This prevents creation of another object, and this makes sure that this null user is a singleton instance and will be used across every point of time in the application. Thirdly, you have created a constructor which is private, so nobody else can create an object of this null user. And why did we do that? Why singleton? Why constructor private? Because we want to override the get method of this class. So there are three variables of the user, that is get name, get email, is active. And I also want to override one of the method which sends the email notification to this email ID with this name. So what I've done is I have overridden these four things. That if the name is not present, return guest. If email is empty, rather than sending null, return some default one, that is code decode no reply, and say that email will be sent to this if it is bouncing back. And if it is active, I'll make it as false because this is the default scenarios. So what all default? Suppose I have a user class, I have hundreds of fields. And if the user is not available, I have to return a default user with 100 fields. So would I create 100 fields and 100 properties for this user and send it every time? That's a bad practice. Rather than that, with those defaults, you could have created a null user and provide all the defaults here. And for the method which sends notification, in case the user is null, then do nothing. This is no operation. This is a safe null object behavior that do nothing. Don't send any notification. The real implementation in the user class would have taken the email ID, which have said hi code decode, and this is your email message. This send notification exactly does nothing. So this is a safe operation if your object is null. So this is how you define your null object for your DTO, which might be a null or it might have different properties as null. Then to prevent the null pointer exception, you would use this null user if the user is null. Now, how would you use it? So in this service class, in the database, you try to find the user with ID 123. If it is not found, then return this null user.instance. What is this null user.instance? This is the static final method that we have created, instance, which will return you an object of this null user. And that's why we have created it as singleton, so that nobody else can create another object of it. And across the system, whenever the user is null, I can just directly call this null user.instance and always return these default values for this and prevent any notification being sent. So now, whenever I try to process the user with user ID 123, it tries to find this user, and if it is null, you will get the null user instance, and with that null user instance, you try to get name. Since it's a overriding of get name, you will get a guest as an output. So here, processing guest and user.send notification will not work at all because the send notification is overridden in this null user, which is returned here, and nothing will be done here. So this welcome code decode or welcome empty will not be sent anywhere, and this method will not do anything if the user is null. So what you can see here is I do not check whether user is null here in the process request, because I've already made sure that if it is null, I'm going to return you the null user, which will have all the defaults, which will have all the methods overridden. In case the user is empty or null, what to do in such situation? Prevent any notification sending, block the user, and make sure it is not active as marking it as false. So that's the beauty of null object pattern. That is a design pattern to eliminate any messy null checks and make your code more robust and readable with default values. So instead of returning null, return the harmless default objects that behaves exactly like do nothing version of your real object. This null user is a do nothing version of your user class. This user would have some name, would have some email address, would have been active, and would properly send an email notification for this email and this name. But since I'm not fetching any user from the database, I want to do all the default logic for this user who is not available in my database. So for example, if the user is not present, I want to register that user and add it to the database. So that logic also you can add in the null user. That rather than sending the notification, first register this user, add it to the database, and give the notification that hi, welcome, you are now registered as a new user. So this beautiful thing can also be done as a utility in this null object. So that is the beauty of this null object design pattern. So it provides you the prevention with the null pointer exception. It prevents all the null checks like this, and it also helps you not to break polymorphism. Why? And this is a very important part of this. This seems very ununderstandable, but this is the most important part of this null object pattern. Why polymorphism is supported here? I'll tell you why. Because you can still call the method like get name and send notification and return the guest and do nothing operation on the send notification. And that's the beauty of polymorphism being still preserved. So if you can see here in the code, you're still doing the get username and you're still sending the notification, though it is not doing anything, because during overriding, you have made it as a fail-safe method behavior that do nothing. So still you are doing the polymorphism. Even though your user is null, you are still able to get the default name. You are still able to do the get default properties, and you are still able to call the send notification and still do nothing. So this is how your polymorphism is preserved. Even though your user is null, still you are able to do all these things. So let's quickly check what is happening here. This null user is nothing but a subclass of this user class. it always returns the safe defaults like guest, empty email ID and all those things. It overrides the send notification method also to do a no operation or do nothing. The instance is created as singleton so that one object is shared across and reused everywhere to prevent again and again creation of null objects. The private constructor ensures no one else can create it and update any of the default configuration of the null user, or what to do when object is null. Register it, nobody can change it. So when user is missing, then you return null user.instance. So when in your database you do not find the ID this particular user, you return a user. And if it is null, then please return that null user instance. This null user instance is nothing but a safe version of your user who will have all the defaults and will have all the operations which will work if the user is empty. For example, it will have the code to register the user if user is not found in your database. So it tries to find the real user. If you find it, return it. If you do not find it, then return the null user instance. This guarantees that this find user will never give you null pointer or nulls. So scenarios, if the user exists, it prints the real name and send the real email notification. But if user does not exist, it prints guest, it does nothing on send notification, and it might even register it and register it to your application as a new user. So what is the benefit? No chance of null pointer exceptions because none of the method returns null. The get name also returns you guest. The email returns you empty string. So null pointer exception is properly removed and handled. There is a cleaner code because no repetitive use of user not equals to null. This might have used n number of times in your places, but rather at the place we are trying to fetch it, just handle it then and there during the database operation. Then all your services can just use the singleton object of that particular database operation of null user. Polymorphic behavior I've already discussed. You are still able to call get name and not get the null pointer exception if the user is null. Rather, you get a default name as guest. Also, the send notification can also be called and it will do nothing. It is test friendly. You can now test your logic without worrying at all. You can give anything. You will not get null pointer exception. They are safe defaults. So if there are too much of defaults like name should be guest, empty string for email, no operations for multiple methods, then that is also a safe default options you can add it to. So when to use this? If you are having this much of not equals to null objects everywhere multiple times repeated, if you can define a reasonable default behavior, for example, guest, empty email ID, do nothing or register the user, then if you have proper default behavior, if the user is not found, use this object. And you are properly working with inheritance and interfaces, then also you can use it. But when not to use it, this is very bad scenario. This is basically becomes an anti-pattern. This null pointer pattern, null object pointer pattern becomes an anti-pattern when you have a behavior that you have a financial application. For example, you have a bank. Now, if that bank is going to return you an empty user, all the operations of that user can still be operated by the user who is not found as logged in user into your banking system. For example, you are not holding any account in the ICICI bank. What will happen? It will give you the default user. It will register to your ICICI and now you can access all the ICICI services. How bad is that? So silent failures are dangerous in banking applications. There, what you need is the third pointer that we have discussed, that is fail fast. That if the user is not present, throw an exception then and there that user is not present. I will not wait for you to get into the system. And then I'm going to trying to fetch the bank account number for that user, but I find the user is not even present in the database. Then throwing an exception of null pointer exception, throw it then and there as soon as the user tries to log in. So where there is the need for file fast exceptions, there this null object pattern becomes an anti-pattern. So where you want to throw an exception and catch the early bugs, then also this is an anti-pattern. And when you do not have any default behaviors, for example, you don't have anything as a username to be sent back. You don't want to give them the name as guest. You don't have any, do not do kind of behaviors, no defaults, then don't use it. So this null object pattern is like a polite, quiet guest. It seems like it does nothing. It just returns doing nothing. It doesn't send any notification. It is an empty method, but it will make sure that it won't crash your party. Basically, it makes sure you don't get a null pointer exception. So it's a beautiful way of handling the null pointer exceptions by having all the defaults of hundreds of fields you can have in your custom object. The fifth and the last important method that nowadays is very frequently and highly used in all enterprise level application is modern annotations and static analysis in IDEs. Now this is very important when you're using compilers and IDEs like IntelliJ or Eclipse. So now when you use any of the Java code like this and you pass these three parameters, you know that your email can be null. So you mark it as @nullable. But you make sure that your name and permissions cannot be null. So you mark it as @not null. So these two annotations, @not null and @nullable, tells the compiler that if it is not null, make sure that this value should never be null. And if it is nullable, please be careful and make sure that you check whether the email which is nullable has to be checked with not null condition, then only should be used. So IDE at the compile time gives you an compile time error saying, reminds you that please check because it is nullable. Before using it, please check whether it is not null. And also, since it is not null, the compiler knows that it is not null value, so you can easily use it then and there. And it is safe to be used. Also, this nullable and not null can be used in method also. So if you mark the method output or the return type as @nullable, this return type says the one who calls the find user by email might return you an empty email or might return you an empty user. Then @nullable will force you that whenever you call this find user by email, like you do here, it will force you to check whether user is not null like this. So this is the task of IDE now, the compiler now, to at compile time itself make sure that this is not null. And also, if you pass any attribute like this and you pass it as not null, it forces the caller method to not pass email as null. If they pass anything as find user by email bracket null, then the compiler will then and there give you the compilation error. So what is the beautiful benefit of this? It improves the IDE handling. So it is safer at compile time. IDE or the static tools wants you the risky code and it provides you the real-time warning and hints that it is marked as not null. So if you are new to this code or you are added as a new developer in this team, please do the null checks because it can come as null from the UI. The second thing is self-documenting code. At this place, you know that looking at this code, you knew that your name and permissions will never be null. You can easily use it. But your email can be null, so you handle this with care. So it is self-documenting code. Everyone, just by looking at the code screams out that this can be null, this cannot be null. So use it precisely like that. No surprises at runtime because at compile time itself, you know that which can be null and hence you would have already handled it because the hints are already given by compilers and static checkers that please handle this up. So there is no null pointer exception at runtime for you. It improves the API contract because when you pass this contract and anybody who comes new to the team, they explicitly know what can be null, what cannot be null and can be better handled and tested. So better testing can be done like you pass the null and handle the null returns if you know all the edge cases because here you know that name will never be null. You can add the test cases like that. So that was 5 beautiful methods of handling it. And what were those 5 methods? The 5 methods were utility classes, string utils, object utils, collection utils. The optional one, the defensive programming where you do the fail fast. As soon as you get the user object, you say object dot require not null. So if the user is null, then and there you throw an exception, but not a null pointer exception. The fourth one was null object pattern, which is also an NT pattern in many systems like banking applications where defensive programming is very much needed. So these are 2 NT patterns. They are conflicting ones. So if you are using default defensive programming, the null object design pattern becomes the NT pattern. And the null object patterns is very beautiful way of handling where you have multiple default values for your properties. And if that object is not present, you want to log, rather than log in, register that user in the system. So this is the beautiful pattern when you don't have any fail fast requirement. And the last one is annotations and static analysis, which will help you in coding and development at compile time will give you exceptions that this might give you a null pointer exception at runtime. Please handle with @nullable or @not null. If that is clear, I'll give you one quick. So I have 3 things more to cover. Okay. pitfalls and common mistakes that will make sure that if this being asked as a tricky question in interview, you will for sure fail. When to use which method? You have the utility classes, optional, defensive programming, null pointers, and when to use what. And the third thing that I have to cover is to give you this kind of doomed code. Now, this is a very big pyramid of doom. If. So if you can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 if conditions and n number of not null conditions. So this is a proper example of pyramid of doom. I'll tell you what this amateur code do. It takes the order, it checks, order should not be null. Then it should check, this order should not be an orphaned order. That is, no customer has placed this order, no one knows from where this order comes to the system. So first you have to check whether this order is placed by a genuine customer. Then you check whether the name is already present and you print, okay, hi customer, this is your order that I have with me. Then in that order you check whether items are not null. For example, if the user, a hacker, somehow plays an order but do not put any items to it, then it should fail then and there. So each order should consist of a proper customer being placing that order and should have proper items list. Items should not be empty in an order. Then in that items, you get the product and get the price of that product and then calculate for each item the total price, and at the end what you get is for that particular order that you are getting into the system, you calculate what is the total amount to be taken as a payment from the customer. So this is the way how doomed pyramid looks like. Now how the professional code would look like after combining these 5 methods. First of all, the first thing that we need to check is order should not be not null. So you add the annotation of @ not null. That is a 5th part of what we have discussed today. And it will tell you that since order is not null, the first thing then and there you have to do is, if the order is null, throw an exception, the order cannot be null. So this object says requires not null. And this makes sure that this is compiled at static and at the compile time itself by multiple IDEs. The second way, that after you have made sure that object is not null, you come down to the customer handling. So optional not off nullable will make sure that if the customer is null, then stop any kind of filtering further. So it will not fetch the name, it will not filter anything, and will stop then and there. But if you do have a customer, then it will try to fetch the name. And with string utils, that is the first method that we have discussed, the utility class, string utils, collection utils, and object utils. So you check here whether it is not empty. And if the name is not empty, then print the customer name. Now, the third is again a very important logic here. So for each order, fetch the items. From each item, fetch the product. For each product, fetch the price and then calculate the total price. So here what we do is, for each order, which is for sure not null, because we have thrown an exception here and there that order cannot be null with object.requires not null. For that, fetch the items. So this will for sure not give me a null pointer exception, order.getItem, because order is not null. Remember one very basic logic, okay? Null pointer exception occurs only when the operation you are trying to do is on null object. So if order is null, this operation will give you null pointer exception. So this will not give you a null pointer exception because we have checked this earlier. Now I'm going for each items list, I'm going to make the optional.off nullable. So what it do is, it wraps the items in an optional. So now if it is null, it will return you optional.empty and none of this chaining will happen because optional is not empty, nothing will happen. So rest of all these steps in this optional chain are skipped and it prevented null pointer exception. But if it is not null and you actually have the proper order, you actually have proper customer and you actually proper have the list of items into it, then you have the optional of list of order items at this point of time. Now you need to check whether items are not empty because now you have a list. So you check with the filter that this list is not empty. And for list, what I've said, not the string utils will work. Object utils is also not working very beautifully on this list. So you can use collection utils because it works on collection beautifully. So it checks the collection util dot is empty items. So it filters out. If the item list is empty, then it short circuits and ends the whole logic here, then and there and do nothing. It will not calculate any total price. But if it is not empty, it will wrap it up into the optional of list of items. Now this optional of list of order items is then mapped to stream. So now this collection is now into stream. Now you check if any of this stream has an empty object, then return string.empty, stream.empty. So if any of the above step would have returned empty optional, for example, this item might be empty. So this object dot get item would have thrown null pointer exception, but since you have wrapped it in of nullable, this or else will fetch this optional dot empty and will return you an empty stream. So this or else is for these three operations. That is, you get the items, you check if it is not empty, and you collect it into the stream. So in any of the case, if anything comes as null, it will fetch it and gives you an empty stream. So if the fourth step is clear, we have an empty stream now, which is a safe stream to work upon, and you will not get null pointer exception. But if nothing gets empty and everything looks fine, then rest of the chain will work perfectly fine. So by this time, you will have the list of order items. So here, you're going to fetch and filter from the list of items, is any item null? So suppose I have placed an order for 5 items, but 2 are out of stock. So I made them null in the business logic. Now I only have 3 items which are valid to be sent to the user, but I still have 2 null in the stream. So what I check is objects.notNull. So now you will add, after this line number 5, you will have all the items which are not null. So total 3 items you will have after this line. Now for each item, you fetch the product. So this is the map. For each order item, you get the products. Now this, for each item, you can have multiple products also. For example, you ordered a mobile and 2 accessories. So each order item will have 3 product list. The mobile, the screen guard, and the back cover. So now you have the list of 3 items here. If in case you do not have the back cover, so what you did is you send the mobile, you send the screen guard, but you made the third item as null. So this filter is to remove that null items and says that now I'm at this point of time, I'm just giving you the 2 products, that is the mobile and the screen guard. So now you map each product with their price. So for example, my phone's price is like 1 lakh and its screen guard is like 6,000. So 1,06,000 is going to be the total price, and this is how I'm going to calculate the total price here. So even this filter also checks whether price is not null. So this is a very complicated stream where you make sure that at the end you do not get null pointer exception, because there are many chances of null here which might have been taken care like this, but the beautiful way of handling is this. So at each step you map, you filter, and for each do something at the last, and in between if you want to send some default, do that also. So what does filter object not null do? It removes any null objects in the stream. Similarly for the prices, it removes all the null prices if there are any in the stream, and at the end it validates its price and calculates the total price. I know that was complicated. If that was that much complicated, let me know in the comment section. I'll create another video on handling of streams with all the 5 methods that I've shown you. Now when to use which method, quick decision guide for you. So use utility classes if they are simple null checks and you don't want to use not equals null for user. Just use collection utils, string utils, or object utils, where there is a straightforward validations and there is no curve needed, there is no functional programming, there is no optional, there is no fail fast programming, no null pointer exception handling, no null object pattern handling. So in that case, with no minimal problematic learning curve, you can just use the utility classes. But if it is very complex nested object, for example, your user have address have city has to be fetched. If you have nested objects, complex one, and you want to use programming functional style, then use optional. If you have banking kind of system where you do not afford having user as null at any point of time, then at the first place itself, as soon as you get the request from the UI, you fetch the user and you check. If the user object dot requires not null, if it is null, throw an error there and there, rather than going to step number 2 and fetching the name or fetching the account balance or account number. Before that itself, throw an exception that your user is null. I'm going to get null pointer exception afterwards. So I'm just handling it with object dot require not null at the first place itself. So that's the defensive programming. That is, it is a fail fast scenario. As soon as you get the object, check it and throw it. And you do not throw null pointer exception. So in that way, your user gets some user specific message that your user that you have published during the registration process is null. The null pointer pattern becomes the anti-pattern in defensive programming, which is not right. But if there is no such scenario of defensive programming, you can handle the nulls, and you have too much of default behavior in the system. For example, if the user is not found, register that user by giving the default email ID, by giving the default permissions of read only to the system with those default behaviors, and sending the email notification that now you are registered properly. Rather than giving a login email, you give the registration email. Then this null object pattern is very much useful. And the last one is annotations. This is when you are doing the ID integration. You are the proper development in the development phase, and your compile time safety is very much important. Then use the annotation based null pointer handling. Now, a very common mistakes and pitfalls. The very first thing is using optional as the method parameter. Now, you would say this is such a common practice. I might send you an optional name. You might internally check if name is present. Do something else. Don't do it. This is the very bad way of handling it. What rather you could have done is you can use @nullable annotation, and inside that you could have checked it after wrapping it up. So why is it bad? This optional name was designed as a return type and not as an input. This is very important thing you should note. While working with optional, make sure that optional was designed as the method return type like this, not as an argument. So it makes the method usage awkward. You do pass optional.empty or null, do you? You don't. So it also increases the bullet code and doesn't help much. So rather than try to stick to returning optional as a method return type rather than as an optional input or an argument. So what rather you could have done is you could have used @nullable. So it will accept a nullable string and you can handle the null internally. Also, the modern ID will make sure that since it is nullable, it will remind you that please check with stringutils.empty whether the name is null or not. The second important don't is please don't use this in the class. For example, you have a user class. You have an address class. In that, you might have city. And that city is optional. So you write option of string of city. That is a wrong way. Multiple people might have done that in their POJOs. But this is a bad programming practice. It will not give you any harm. The code will entirely work end to end. But that is a bad programming practice. That is not a professional one. Why? Because optional was initially meant to wrap up temporary data and not to be persisted in memory. Now, if I'm going to store that in the memory, @entity I have annotated over this user object, where address and city is also going to store in the database, you unnecessarily wrap the overhead of handling this optional during database save. So the serializations and JPA becomes messy with the optional handling. So please do not use it any of the classes which are going to be used as entities in your object. You can use it in details, that is fine, but try to avoid it in the database handling. So rather you just keep it as private string email, and during the get of that email, you check whether this email is not null by wrapping it up in the optional. So whenever you get an email, you get the optional of string, and that is the return type. Remember, this is the return type of a method. So optional should be used as a return type and not as an argument to a method. This is a very professional tip that I'm giving you today. The second thing is, do not use this optional as a return type of your entities or tables or the database handling POJOs. The JPA entities. Do not do that. Rather, while you're fetching the email, just return the optional of string, which will give you a way to handle the nulls by fetching the user.getEmail.ifPresent, a method of optional to handle the null pointer exception. So simplify your fields with nullable objects, expose it using optional only in the getter method. So remember, you don't use @Lombok, @data, @getter, @setter. Rather, override this getEmail method by your own. If you think that email can become nullable going forward, return the optional of this. in your entity class, so that whenever you use it in any of the business logic, you will be able to handle the nulls by using optional.if present or is present method, rather than if you just do user.email and get the null pointer exception out of it. So it keeps your object clean and avoid confusions. The third very no is to do optional.get. 90% of the people do it with optional because this is the best way to fetch the object out of this optional. But they don't think of putting if present or is present kind of methods before calling the get. Why is it dangerous? Because if optional is empty, the get will throw no such element exception. This is as good as null pointer exception. So if anything was null and you do .get, it will give you the no such element exception. This completely defeats the entire purpose of optional, because you for sure remove the null pointer exception, but you introduced no such element exception. So it's completely defeating the process of optional. So if in any of your code, go search, if you get optional.get, then in there give the PR review comment that it should be in the block called as option.if present, then get. So if the option is empty, it will throw no such element exception, which completely defeats the purpose of not throwing an exception if the default value comes. Or the best way to handle is optional.or else default or else throw, if you're trying to get it. These are the 3 bad practices. First, optional to be passed as an argument to a method, which is not good. It is not meant to be an input to an argument or a method as an argument. It is meant for the return types. Using optional as the field in entities or the JPA table POJOs. In that case, you will mess up the database save method, because your optional might null, you will end up saving some weird null optional in the databases. So rather, what you could have done is, you could have saved the simple string as email, and during fetch of it, you can return the optional of email. The third important thing that you should not do is optional.get. It will give you the runtime exception of no such element. You can either use or else and throw to give some kind of default values or runtime exceptions. So that was all about the trending way of handling the null pointer exceptions, preventing the pyramid of doom like this, and doing a beautiful professional coding like this. If you have any more ways of handling the nulls, or if you want the second part where even advanced topic of this handling of nulls is covered, just let me know in the comment section. I'll create the second part of this. Thank you.